All right, so welcome everyone. This week, our webinar, we are talking about incarnation, incarnational living, incarnational life. And with me, I've got Steve Marfia, who's going to share with us today, and Christian Aguilar. Christian, why don't you introduce yourself in case some people here don't know who you are and how we connect?
All right. I am a missionary working here in the United States for 18 years, helping to plant churches in Pennsylvania. And right now I am having my church in Hamilton, PA, and also connected like almost weekly with NRC and CREO, developing this movement about to reach out and be more missional. And also I am leading a mission project that it's reaching out the migrant workers that they need to come every year to Pennsylvania to pick the apples and peaches. And that is around 2,500 workers that we are promoting like a local mission for local churches.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good stuff. So why don't I start with John chapter 1. John chapter 1, verse 14. The word became, and I'm reading this from the Message because I love the way that it's said in the Message. For the purpose of this webinar, the word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. The word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. And so you have the idea of God is for us. God so loved the world that he's with us, Emmanuel, God with us. And then in the incarnation, you have this God moving into the neighborhood. He becomes one of us. You even get that from Paul: to the Jews, I became a Jew; to the Greeks, I became a Greek. So if you could share a little bit of, if you could read that passage, Steve, that'd be helpful too.
Yeah, definitely. 1 Corinthians 9, 19 to 23. Paul writes, "For though I am free from all, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win more of them. To the Jews I became as a Jew, in order to win Jews. To those under the law I became as one under the law, though not being myself under the law, that I might win those under the law. To those outside the law I became as one outside the law, not becoming outside the law of God, but under the law of Christ, that I might win those outside the law. To the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some. I do it all for the sake of the gospel, that I may share with them in its blessings."
So what you have there, as we're sort of kicking off the idea or concept, is you start with Jesus. You always start with Jesus. Jesus is Lord. He's the center of everything we do. He's our absolute obsession, is Jesus. We're obsessed with Jesus. And Jesus came as a missionary, moved into the neighborhood, lived amongst us, God with us, God for us in the neighborhood as one of us, and ate our food, walked our streets, wore our clothes, right? You have a God who is very present amongst the people, ate the falafel of the day, right? And so you have that really beautiful image of a God amongst the people who understood them, lived in the neighborhood for 30 years and nobody noticed. Very few actually lived in the neighborhood right there amongst them. Who is this? That's just Joseph and Mary's kid, right? Working a blue collar job. So really fascinating, the whole concept of living amongst as one of the people. And then Jesus says, as the Father sent me, I send you, right? So God, the Father sent the Son sent the disciples, sent the Spirit to empower us so that we could live out of our calling. And, so I think in the same way, we follow that pattern of you start with Jesus, and Jesus, who was the ultimate missionary, who entered our world, moved into our neighborhood, and then sent the disciples. You start with Jesus, which then moves you into mission. So Jesus sent the disciples and sends us. We are sent by God. As Spurgeon said, every Christian is a missionary or an imposter.
Yeah.
Right? So we are sent by God, empowered by the Spirit to live on mission. You start with Jesus, then you move to mission. And then mission determines what church looks like. So you really don't know what church is going to look like till you get there. Once you get to Berlin or Africa or, the suburban neighborhood or the city street, then you understand, okay, this is what it looks like to be a missionary to these people. And then various expressions of church will sort of form as you see disciples made out of the harvest. So all of that as the backdrop. Steve, I'd like to, just let you kick it off a little bit on what does it look like for you living as a local where you're at? What does incarnational living look like for you?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not originally from the town that I live in now where God called me, but when my wife and kids and I bought a house here in the neighborhood, we moved in. One of our goals was to understand and get to know folks in our neighborhood so that we could take on that mentality that we didn't come here for you, but God put us here because we're one of you, and we want to get to know and love this town and be accepted as part of it. It's interesting in our area. I'm in the Northeast in South Jersey, not far from Philadelphia, very different from my original Northern California spot that I grew up in. But around here, a lot of people say, like, if you move into a neighborhood, it takes 5 to 7 years for your neighbors to accept you and to even recognize you. And so we felt like, okay, that's a good task to be up against. Would it take that long for people to accept Jesus if he put on flesh and moved into this house right here? And so our mentality was, okay, we can't be about building the church. We've got to be about the ministry that Jesus has called us to love people and trust that he'll do the rest from there. So when we moved in, we started prayer walking the neighborhood and getting to know folks and invite kids to play with our kids. And, when birthday parties came, we invited the neighbors over and, open the doors for conversations there where we just took the slow, steady route of saying, God, give us a heart to love our neighbors and not to view them as other than or less than, but part of who they are. And over, a number of months, God gave us quite a few opportunities to build relationships. And that started with everyday stuff. It was the conversation over the fence when taking the trash out with my neighbor, and it was the birthday parties that our kids had because we have a couple kids in the neighborhood that are the same age as ours. And that was where everyday life intersected. And we had the opportunity to get to know the hearts, the lives, the stories, the backgrounds of the people around us. And so that really took a lot of patience to see people the way Jesus does, because I love to get in and get stuff done. And that's not why Christ sent us here. And we had to take on the mentality of, okay, Lord, give me a heart to love people. How can you use me to bless them in any particular circumstance? And over the last few years, we've built deep friendships with quite a few neighbors. And I'll just use the neighborhood as my first example because it's been a really neat opportunity to see God at work. And we've had quite a few gospel conversations with dear neighbors that are close friends. There's a group of us in the neighborhood that are close. And it was interesting because, we've shared the life, when one has lost a dog and is crying, we bring the brownies over and the card and hug them and pray for them. And, when their kid got christened because the family is Catholic and insisted on it, we were there for part of that. And, when the 40th birthday party came and all the wild high school friends that they've been friends with for 20 something years came together to party, and we got to be there for that. And so it was really about developing trust and learning to love people and identify with just who they are because we cared, because Christ cared about us. As a quick wrap up with the neighbors, there's a group of us on text. It's actually my birthday, so a bunch of our neighbors are shooting over text today, and my neighbor next door, whom I just have a great friendship with, and he's not following Jesus at this point, but we've had awesome spiritual conversations along the way. And a few weeks ago, he told me around the bonfire, he's like, bro, I just love that you love Jesus and that you love me and that you're willing to share your life with him, regardless of where I'm at. And that was the first time I'd heard that in 4 years since moving into the neighborhood. And it was amazing to hear. It was a huge encouragement. But just to give you kind of an idea on the level that those friendships are at, everyone's sending the happy birthday text to me today on this group text with a bunch of us in the neighborhood. And the picture I got from him was with in his Speedo with one leg kicked up in the backyard Adirondack chair and a couple of people around him. Because that's what happens when you're living incarnationally. People get to realize that you love them for who they are and not what you want to do or accomplish. And they share. And so I'll be honest with you, like, it's a great honor. Ironically, I don't love looking at the picture, but that's not the point. The point is I love Tim and he's fun. And that's a little piece of who he is. And so learning to let go of some of my preconceived notions and expectations and to say, God, just give me your heart to love people has been the approach that made the difference when we moved in here and has allowed us to develop deep levels of love and trust with the people around us who are dear friends.
Yeah, I say oftentimes, if you want to know how missional you are, like look at your last 10 text messages. If you say that you are really on the mission of Jesus in your community, neighborhood, workplace, wherever, but all of your text messages are with all people that already believe or already a part of your church, then maybe your life isn't connected with these people as much as you think it is. And so probably go through your text message threads and see how connected you are to people. It's a really good test to see where our relationships are at.
Yeah, man, you might just be on mission if you get a text from a friend in a Speedo showing off the bod with happy birthday written over it.
Yeah.
That's great. Christian, what about you, man? What's been what does incarnation look like for you? What's it look like to connect with people where you're like a friend and sharing the table?
One is the biggest tool that I have to share with people and neighbors in my community is doing picnics in my yard or outside of any place around a fire pit. It's really easy to connect and having a conversation, and you can discover all the needs and challenges that your neighbor have it. And I remember that when I met Mike Jarrell like 12 years ago, and I asked for like a beautiful advice how to improve my church planting. And he said, Christian, do picnics and picnics and picnics. and I was destroyed. I didn't know. I was expecting to do this book or ABC or this program or I don't know. And I get anger after that meeting. Because I have the expectation to hear like biblical stuff. I don't know, John 3:16, something. Nothing. It was picnic in a fire pit. And then I start to pray and I start to have more people in my picnics than Sunday morning churchy thing. And that is bring me to improve the idea. Beside picnic, it was like do camping. And after camping, it's visiting places. And right now, I can tell you many people from my congregation that they have tents, pop-up campers, and they are like developing the idea to get together anywhere, anytime with anyone. So it's become like a beautiful experience to represent what is going on with unconnected people, untouched people, with believers and unbelievers at the same time.
Yeah, that's really good. Why don't you share with them a little bit about what you're doing with migrant workers and Smores?
All right. The Smores ministry, it's really cool because I have many local churches that they are interested to do local mission with me, reaching out migrant workers that they need to pick apples right here in the community.
Describe how many migrant workers.
25 migrant workers that they come every year. So they don't have family, they don't have friends.
25?
2,500.
2,500.
So that is my mission field. So I said, I can do it by myself. Let me call some Mennonite churches or Presbyterian, anyone. And they have all the time the same kind of question, that they don't know the language, they don't know the culture, cross-cultural challenges. And I said, that is blah, 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 blah. And I explained, hey, what about if you can bring some wood, fire pit, and marshmallows, and you can give to them the opportunity to know your culture right here with s'mores. And they said, like, my first impression when I hear picnic, it was the same, what? And I said, just come and bring the stuff. I will help you with anything else. And they start to make s'mores, and one worker show up, and then two, and then 3, 5. We finished with 45 migrant workers around a fire pit, talking about anything, sharing Jesus, sharing his love, without Spanish, without any mission school or something. And we experience the incarnation. I have another group that I am trying to reach the people from Haiti, and I don't know anything about Creole. But we start to bring bingo, the bingo thing, that just we need to know a letter and the number. And just with that, we are like killing it, because people from Haiti, they start to play bingo, and sometimes they make a line. They say, hey, bingo. It's okay, I have a prize for you. You have this, you have shoes or shampoo or socks, anything that they need. We are just providing them like a prize, and without any preparation, just 5 minutes in your mission field, and you start to feel that Jesus is there. And the mission, like Mike said in the beginning, is giving you the shape how to create church environment in 5 minutes. No kidding, 5 minutes.
Yeah, so rather than try to do sort of an outreach and in drag, which is what I think most so-called evangelism is how do we go pull these people into our space? Incarnational living says, how do we enter that space and become a part of that circle with these people? And you see some form or expression of church sort of grow out of those relationships, out of that community. So Steve, with that in mind, outside of just your neighborhood, what are some other examples of incarnational living that you've seen with your communities?
Yeah, I mean, the recent place that my family and I have really been on mission has been at our gym. And we just connected with this new gym at the beginning of the year, so probably mid-February. And early on, we just spent time praying, God, who's here in this gym that you may be after, and give us a heart to get to know and love and care for folks here. And over time, a few relationships began to develop, and the next thing you know, a football conversation arose, and a fantasy football team got put together, and then a football party got thrown, and then I started to notice that the Lord gave me a heart for one of the coaches at the gym, young guy who, just has been through a lot in his life and is does an excellent work at his job. And the next thing you know, we're at a football party and he's sharing about some of the tragedies in his life and how those things have shaped his perspective on life, and how fitness saved his life. And opportunities like that are not something that I could manufacture or make up. I spent months praying for and hoping for an opportunity to get into a deep, meaningful conversation with somebody like him, and the opportunity arose when I did least expected it. To be honest with you, that's because God was at work in ways that I couldn't come up with or manufacture. And he's really the one that was on mission leading the thing. I just wanted to be part of what he was doing, which has been one of the main mantras and mottos of ministry for us is, God, we want to be part of what you're up to. How could you use us? So this Saturday, relationships have continued to develop at the gym. We're in the end of a 6-week challenge, where a lot of people are going for, setting different goals and trying to hit them and stuff like that. So we're throwing a cornhole tournament and post-challenge party in the backyard on Saturday for all the folks at our gym, and invite them all over just to say, hey, y'all been working hard, eating hard, sweating it out, grinding for 6 straight weeks now to hit the next goal that you have. We want to celebrate your hard work and the successes and efforts and all that stuff, and develop deeper level of community here within the gym. I think one of the things that I found really valuable is learning to think along the lines of common ground. Most people deeply long for community in meaningful ways. I'm in a middle-class neighborhood, and that's one thing that pretty much everybody here has in common, is a longing to know their neighbors. And it's pretty similar at the gym. And so with that in mind, we're throwing the cornhole tournament, smoking up some brisket, inviting them over, and throwing a case of beer and water into the cooler, and we'll see what happens from there. But I hope some new and or deeper friendships will come out of that. So that's one other way that we're seeking to, live on mission with Jesus and do the incarnational thing.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how easy it is. If rather than, and this is the mistake I think that we oftentimes make in trying to reach people and make disciples, is that we think we have to put on some sort of event and get people to it. There are so many things already happening. You just have to have eyes to see it, right? And just observe as a missionary what's happening in my neighborhood, what's happening in my community, what's happening in my workplace. Join your workplace fantasy football league. Don't start a church basketball league. Join the one that's already happening in your community, right? Like I was introduced last week to this like underground community of cornhole players. I had no idea this guy that his son played with my son. They played baseball together. I was coaching the team. He's been inviting me out for cornhole, and we've had so much going on. I haven't been able to join him for a while. Finally get out, and he's like, yeah, you want to throw bags with me? I had no idea the level of operation. I'm used to, like, not to brag, I'm used to winning when I play cornhole. I went and showed up with these guys. They destroyed me. I mean, I got 0 points. They had like a professional like scoreboard mounted into the ground, floodlights on the side of the house pointing down on their cornhole boards. Like there was this legitimate, just like professional. The one guy's like, I just got done last Saturday with a cornhole tournament, in a city, in another city with all these guys. And just a crazy underground community. Right afterwards, the guy's like, yep, we're doing another tournament in 3 days. You in, Jarrell? I did text my wife and go, I'm going to be late. I'm like, I didn't realize the level of cornhole that was going on here. All these neighbors are showing up and bringing stuff. And I'm like, my goodness. But if you have eyes to see it, there are these opportunities around us that I think so often, like you say, the gym, what neighbors are doing. I've referenced this to some of you guys. We got a whole group of neighbors that all turn their garages into man caves, and they take turns watching games. They got couches in their garages and screens up on the walls. And you don't need to invite them to some structured church event. Just start hanging out and watching games in their garages with them. I mean, that alone, your presence, not pushing your faith, not trying to get them to come to you, but you going to them, sitting with them, and then asking questions, being curious, being a part of their life, becoming a friend with these people. Really critical when we think about incarnational living.
Yeah, absolutely. I've noticed that a lot of those kinds of opportunities, when I'm in a rush going in life and not making margin for people and relationships, I miss out on some of the best opportunities because I don't hang and stay and slow down and just be present. Some of the best conversations happen after half the crowd's left and a few folks are hanging around. And so much great spiritual conversations happen, after the party or around the bonfire, or, you know what I mean? What were you gonna say, Mike?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, and this is huge, this is really huge for this webinar. I think if we don't start with mission so often gets squeezed out.
Yeah.
Just doesn't happen.
That's great.
However, I was looking at my wife because we've got a group of people that we've been on mission with, and seasonally, a whole bunch of our kids are involved with football on Sundays. Our girls are cheerleading. Some of their kids are playing. Some of their other kids are cheerleading. We got to the football field the one day. I looked at my wife and I went, like 2/3 of our micro church is here. And they're here from like noon until 5 p.m. And so we need to, for this season, really see this football field and all of their friends and all of these families as our mission. And so we're hanging out here. We're inviting other people from our micro church to come and hang out and watch the games and cheer. We're setting up tents. We're having after parties back at our house. And when that happens, conversations stretch into the evening, and there are faith conversations happening. And then I got a guy sitting with me on my patio looking at me going, hey, I've always been a really analytical guy. I didn't believe in Jesus, but hanging out with you guys, I think part of what did it for me is that you've taught me to embrace mystery. You've taught me to be curious. You've taught me paradox. Jesus has become fascinating to me because you guys are obsessed with him. I think I believe in Jesus now. This happened last Friday, right? As the night stretched out on Friday night, he said, I think I believe in Jesus now. He said, I think I might even want to be baptized. Yeah. I'm like, this is awesome. Love it. But we have to really start. If you start with mission, you end up with mission and community. And then based on the questions, the struggles, the trials, the hurts and the pains going on in someone's life, you're able to intersect God's story with their story. And some of the most incredible learning and teaching and explanation comes out of that. But too often, because we're not thinking as missionaries, because we're not going to a group of people and becoming flesh amongst these people, right? Showing the presence of Jesus in these garages, in these youth sport environments, on people's patios, around cornhole boards. We fail to be able to connect God's story with their story. Because the only tool we have is to try to suck them out of their environment instead of join them in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that oftentimes I think is a little but dramatic shift from what do I do or what should I do to who can I love and how can I love them, and being willing and available to make that kind of shift has been dramatic to see the Holy Spirit open up doors into opportunities and life with people and conversations with people that I could have never imagined or created on my own best effort.
And if all else fails, get a dog.
Get a dog, walk the dog, let everyone pet the dog.
I'm telling you, I've met probably 100 people that they live around me. I didn't even know them. I got a dog and I know twice as many people. Getting a puppy. I'm telling you, it's an unbelievable bridge to connecting with people. But yeah, I think part of it too is thinking like a beginner, like a missionaries that go to various places all over the planet are asking questions like, where do these people hang out?
Yeah, one of the things that I am reaching also, beside the migrant workers, I am reaching believers. I am reaching churches. And even if you are Mennonite or Presbyterian or Baptist or Pentecostal, wherever, they have the same issue that they don't know and they don't connect with the community. So it's look like bringing the mission thing, it's getting uncomfortable because it's the pain, is the disaster in many churches and believers, but also local mission, it's bringing the medicine, is bringing the rejoice, is bringing your healing. It's like a physical therapy for the body of the church, because you put in action your body, your muscles, using the APES, the five ministries over there: evangelism, shepherd, teaching, prophet, and apostolic gift at the same time. I said, so local missions is bringing what you need, and also it's super biblical, and you have to do it no matter what happened, just being involved with your community right there.
Yeah, and I think you're saying mission, faith without mission is dead, right? Faith without works,
Your
faith
body's
without
dead.
action. And so you get people who are sitting lifeless, consuming information, but not applying the truths of God, and their faith is literally not alive. There's no life to it. There's no energy to it. There's no new stories. There's not an excitement and watching God change people's lives. But when you invite, as Christian said, some of these people, come with me, we're going to serve these people, help these people. You're literally inviting dead churchgoers into living faith. And so, yeah, that's a real critical piece. Yep.
You have a beautiful revival right there.
Hirsch would call that liminal space,
Yes.
right? Where you're inviting people out of their comfort zone to be stretched as they engage outside of the walls of their comfortable Christian circles. When you're sitting around a circle and you're watching an atheist start to ask meaningful questions, or you're serving someone that's really like hurting or messy, your faith is reinvigorated and brought back to life in ways that it can't be just sitting in a circle that's very safe. So some of the questions I think Jesus might ask, what is broken about this community? Who is invisible? There are probably people in your neighborhood, in your workplace, that have been not noticed, that if Jesus were in that neighborhood, he would see them, engage them, sit with them, maybe go out of his way to say, I had to go to that part of the neighborhood. So I had to go to Samaria, right? And so we're starting to ask questions like, what sucks about this neighborhood, about this workplace, and what is the Holy Spirit calling me to change? What types of things might I invite people into that we would see transformation or healing? What other types of questions do you guys ask as you start to think about being the presence of Jesus in a place? What are some of the questions that pop into your heads? Christian, Steve.
You want to hit that first, Christian?
You first.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the big question that I ask is, God, what are you up to in this person's life or in this space? And how can I participate with you? And God, who are you giving me a heart to love? And how can I love them? Which usually requires some simple but meaningful dialogue, just to get to know who they are and what their story and what they're into, and what is their family and home life like, and their hobbies and their work life like. Because often in simple everyday conversations are where the Holy Spirit will all of a sudden give me that nudge to go, okay, here's a way that you can love someone by serving them. I developed a friendship with one guy in the neighborhood simply because, every weekend he was out blowing the leaves, and he's got the most trees in his yard. And so his leaf piles are just massive. And, I get done in an hour or two, and I'd be like, listen, I'm just going to take my blower over next door and just help you out. Next thing you know, we're finishing the job together, and that turns to a conversation and a beer, and then the opportunity is there. So that question of God, how can I help? How can I serve? Jesus, what would you do if you were here right now? Is a huge one. And those are often questions that I ask, not just in my time with God during the day, but I ask in the midst of everyday circumstances, when I'm getting out of the car, when I pulled into the neighborhood and my neighbor pulls up at the same time. Jesus, what would you do in this situation? And oftentimes that spurs on the simple motivation to want to walk across the street and engage the neighbor who I just talked to a few days ago. And quite honestly, if I'm being between us, I wasn't that interested in, but God's up to something in their life in a way that I could have never known and realized. Those are some of the primary questions that I ask, and I like to keep them, in my right pocket, so to speak. Things that I'm constantly asking the Lord to give me kind of his heart and his eyes for who and what is going on around me, in a way that I don't skip or miss out because I'm moving too fast. Otherwise, I'll fall in love with my own great ideas and my own desire for success and miss out on the fact that there are real people right around me who are as deserving as Jesus' love as I was when he first met me and gave it to me. And just because I've been redeemed, I'm no more valuable or unique necessarily than somebody else is. And I just love that idea of thinking like a missionary, because when you enter into a cross-cultural dynamic, there is really no option other than to humble yourself so much that you take on the attitude of a learner who is constantly asking questions of the people around you in such a way that you can just get to understand how to live life very simply in the midst of the context that you're in. And I think that that's an incredible reminder for me to maintain, especially as I am not just new to a neighborhood I'm seeking to love, but have gotten to know it well enough that I feel like I'm part of it, and sometimes find myself tempted to, pass by certain neighbors that I feel like, well, we didn't really connect very well, simply because, I'm not paying attention to what God's doing, and I'm more focused on what I'm up to than what they're up to. And so I think those are great opportunities for me, even just to grow near to Christ, because the questions that I'm asking help me expose my own heart to myself in such a way that I can bring it to Jesus, and he continues to do that transforming work for me. So that's where I'd go with it.
So let me throw 3 key words out and write these down, because I think this is really critical. The first being frequency. You want to keep seeing the same people, right? So if you keep going to the same gym, if you keep being a part of the same poker night, if you keep playing cornhole with the same group of people on Friday nights, if you have this frequency of seeing a group of people regularly, right? They're on your radar. You're thinking about them. You continue to see them. And so you think of these people because they become a part of your life. They become a part of the rhythm of your week, of your schedule. These are people that you're one of them. You're one of them. You're amongst them. They're your people. And so frequency is critical. The second one is proximity, right? So if you got people that are living right around you, when you take a walk, when you walk the dog, when you're pushing your kid in a stroller or whatever, you're going by their houses. That it's a constant reminder of these people that you're called to that are all around you. Third word is prayer. And Dave Sulak is such a Jedi at this. But I think if you write down people's names that God has broken your heart for, and you pray for them every day, pray for these people every day. When you pray for them every day, you're passing them when you take walks, you're seeing them every week, there's a frequency going on. Then they're also going to be the people that you text, because you're thinking about them, you're praying for them. They're at the top of your mind. The Spirit will bring them back into your head and bring them back into remembrance. So I think frequency, proximity, and prayer. is really critical for starting to see some sort of momentum happen as we live incarnationally. What are you thinking, Christian?
I don't know who is in this group, but I receive a word. I think it's for someone that you need to hear this, that maybe is struggling how to apply missional life in your church, in your community. And it is about Luke chapter 15 with the lost sheep, and then the lost coin, and then the lost son. And it's no matter if you're like a strong believer, sometimes we can get lost inside of the house, inside of the fleet, inside in the house of the Father. And I don't know what leader is right now watching. Maybe you are getting lost inside of your church, and maybe you don't know what to do or what is the next step. And maybe you think that it's complicated, but let me tell you, many of us, we can get lost very easy inside of the house. So we need the light of the Holy Spirit. We need the love of the Father to receive us. We need the love of a shepherd who need to go and pick this guy who is lost and bring him back. So I hope you can receive this simple word of encouragement for someone who is listening right now.
Mhm. That's really great. And with that, I'm going to say thank you for watching. It was great to have you tune in.